So what exactly is a sojourn? Webster's defines a sojourn as a temporary stay. But the power, which is the Pennsylvania, yes. Oh, sorry. The Pennsylvania Organization of Watersheds and Rivers calls their definition as paddling trips that offer both new and experienced an opportunity to connect with our rivers by enjoying outdoor recreation and learning more about a specific waterway while accompanied by experienced guides. And that is a good definition of what a sojourn is in terms of the state of Pennsylvania. So what is the history of sojourns? Many of you probably recognize Cindy Dunn, Secretary of DCNR. Basically, back in the 80s, the late 80s, she was working with a corporate partner on some projects in the Susquehanna, and they were discussing the lack of awareness that existed around the resource, particularly the Susquehanna at that point. And the two of them came up with this idea to start a trip, let's take a trip and let's invite VIPs and people, public, to come on this trip, and that will be a way to bring awareness to the issues that they were looking at. So the very first ever Pennsylvania Sojourn was held on the North Branch of the Susquehanna River in 1990, and she is forever known as the Queen of the Sojourns. And that's how they started. So over the last 25 plus years, 30 years, there have been sojourns on many different waterways across the state. You can see the list. This is not a full list, close to a complete list, but you can see all the different rivers and creeks and waterways that sojourns have been held on. I think today, the Schuylkill, Susquehanna, Delaware, Lehigh, Perkiomen, those are sort of the big ones now, and then some of these other ones sort of do every other year. It really depends on sort of the local group and the organizing entity whether they want to hold one that year. So just a little bit of history on the Schuylkill Sojourn. November 26, 1978, the Schuylkill River was designated as Pennsylvania's first scenic river. In 1996, the Schuylkill River Valley was designated a state heritage area, which our organization took on that designation and oversees that work. In 1999, the Schuylkill River was named River of the Year, and that was when we held the very first Schuylkill River Sojourn, was that year when we received the River of the Year award. And then in 2000, the Schuylkill River Valley was designated a National Heritage Area by the United States Congress. And so our organization does both state and National Heritage Area work. So a typical sojourn at this point on the Schuylkill looks a lot like what you're seeing there. 7-day event. We launch from Schuylkill Haven up in Schuylkill County, where the creek is, the river's probably 20 or 25 feet wide. And we paddle over 7 days and 115 miles all the way to Boathouse Row in Philadelphia. We average about 15 miles a day. 3 meals are provided a day, plus snacks along the way, water stops. We have both on water and on land guides, which I'll get into in a little bit. Full shuttle service to move all of your things. We have full medical support. We have wilderness EMTs, wilderness first aid trained folks. Educational programming along the way, another thing I'm going to talk about in my presentation today. And then, this is a pretty significant event, 7 days, 8 days if you count sort of the evening before when people start to come and camp out. Our staff and volunteers have to provide for 250 people any human need that you can imagine that people need to deal with over the course of a week, we provide. So it's a pretty it's an overwhelming event, but it's also really fantastic, and I think we're going to be able to get into some of that here today. So what does a typical sojourn day look like? We start with a you register ahead of time, a month in advance, 3 weeks in advance. But then if you're coming to paddle that day, you show up at 6:30 or 7 o'clock, check in, we get you all the things that you need. Breakfast is served. People can have breakfast for 7 to 8 or so. And then we have what's called a safety briefing, and that is mandatory every day, where our guides sort of go over what the day is going to look like, things you need to know. You paddle for a little while, you have lunch, you usually stop at a county park or a local site, get out of the water where lunch is already waiting for you. You have lunch for a while, then we have an education program, eventually sort of push back off into the river. Take out later in the day. Sometimes there's, like I said, water stops, especially on years where the weather is very, very hot. We'll make more frequent stops for water for people. And then usually we're off the water by, it can be as early as 3:30 or maybe as late as 5, but typically 4:30 your paddling is done for the day. And you set up your camp, and then you can just start to relax a little bit and have dinner. And then there is always an evening program every day. So one of the things people don't understand is they think, oh, it's a 7-day event, I have to sign up for all 7 days. That's not true. You can do 1 day, you can do 3 days, you can do any combination you want. You can come on Saturday and then come back on the next Thursday. You can sign up and register for whatever combination you want. We do have typically from year to year about 60 or 65 people that do the entire week. So it makes it for a really fun week for those that are doing the whole thing. So some of the questions people want to know: where in the world am I going to sleep for this whole week? So we partner with communities, local townships, municipalities, county parks, community parks, occasionally on private property, but mostly at this point it's all on public property. And we have these set up campsites every night. So the first one is in Port Clinton, and we camp along the way near Reading and Muhlenberg Township and Pottstown and along the way. So we have some really beautiful camp spots and great accommodations for people. What am I going to eat is a big question. Well, we provide, as I said, 3 meals a day and lots of snacks all in between. There is a phrase that people say, particularly about the Schuylkill River Sojourn, that you will not lose weight on the Schuylkill River Sojourn. We feed people very, very well. We have great food. We do provide vegetarian options. That's sort of as far as we go, trying to provide dietary needs for people. We will provide vegetarian options at every meal. So the food is fantastic. We try to get a good variety of things for people throughout the week. Ice cream trucks make their appearance multiple times during the week, which is always fun. You also think, what am I going to do with all of my stuff? Well, we have an outfitter called Take It Outdoors, who is a partner of ours. They are our land outfitter and our on-water outfitter. So every morning you wake up and you break camp, you pack up your tent, your sleeping bags, all your stuff, and they will have a tent like this on the right, and they will have a sign that says place your bags here, and all you do is walk it over. You put your stuff down, and when you take off of the river at the end of the day, your bag is already unpacked and ready for you to just go pick up and set up your tent. They will not set up your tent for you. That's your job. But they do a great job of moving gear. The only thing you have to take with you for the day is whatever things if it's going to be wet and rainy, maybe take a dry bag with a rain jacket, some personal snacks, lots of water, of course. So you take what you need for the day. Everything else is moved for you. It's a really, really nice service. We have people, those full trippers, honestly, they come and they leave their car in Schuylkill Haven, and they sort of turn off to the world for a whole week and just participate in the Sojourn. And don't think about any of those things, and they just enjoy a whole week on the river. Our guides, we have used several different guide services over the years. It started back in the day with Canoe Susquehanna, which was a group that Cindy Dunn knew. They were a husband and wife outfitter up by Bucknell. Alan and Betsy Quant and their family, they were fantastic folks, and they guided, I think, the first 20 sojourns. And that's their son on the right. They're not all scary like Jeremy looks with his river knife in that picture. But we started with them, and they served us for over 20 years, and they were fantastic. And then a gentleman who sort of was an understudy of them has an outfitter called Bad Adventures, and we've used them for a couple of years. And then when Schuylkill River Greenways took over Take It Outdoors, we started a strategic partnership with them. Last year was the first year that they fully guided for us on the Sojourn. So they're fantastic. We have a team of anywhere between 8 and 10 individuals who that is what they do all week. They are there to make sure that we get people down the river safely, carefully, thoughtfully, but also having fun. The guides are a great resource for learning how to paddle, learning about the river. They do a really, really, really great job getting people down the river safe each day. So last year, that was the team on the left of guides for the year. And it is guaranteed that we will have swimmers throughout the week. Not everybody gets wet, but some people do. And when you find yourself out of your boat, they do a really, really great job of making sure that you're safe and getting back in and cared for well. So on that topic, the Schuylkill River is a very, very user-friendly river for paddling. I think there's only 2, maybe 3 sections that are considered class 2 plus. Everything else is very, very docile and very user-friendly. So you don't have to be, it's a really great river to learn on, and it's a great river for a sojourn. As I mentioned earlier, one of the really, really big things that we stress during the Sojourn each year is education programming. We have education programming every day at lunch and at dinner. And we have brought out this is a really great opportunity for us to partner with a lot of the organizations throughout the watershed. I'm sure some of you I recognize, obviously, your organizations have been involved in working with and partnering with the Schuylkill River Greenways to provide education programming during the week. Sometimes it's very, very hands-on. Other times it's a little bit more sort of lecture format and sort of just hearing what somebody has to present on. But the educational programming is really important for us, and we really take a lot of pride in the programming that we provide for folks. We've done interpretations, obviously, from the Park Service, a very, very big partner of ours. That is Adam. He is still at Valley Forge. He is one of Sojourners really love hearing from Adam. He tells some great stories, and so he joined us last year and the year before as well. And then we've, over the years done reenactments and all kinds of things. Anything you can think of, we have done. Every year we have a different theme for the Sojourn. Every year we produce a sticker that goes on people's boats that participate. And then that sticker sort of represents what the theme is, and you can just see some of them here. We've done things like canals and landmarks. We did one, Our Working River, where we focused on the industry of the river and the history of the industry along the river. We've done several that focus on sort of ecology and biology. We've done years where we've just done like a water quality and water monitoring focus, where we had somebody every single day doing water quality testing all the way down the river and engaging the participants with, this is how you do water quality testing. So all kinds of different themes each year, and I will go later in my presentation, we'll talk about what we're doing this year for 2024. One of the great things about the Sojourn, first and foremost, what the Sojourn is about the river itself, celebrating the river, drawing attention to the river as a natural resource, drawing attention to the river as the recreational resource that it is, and the communities that support it. So along the way, I think we touch about 16 different communities over the 7 days. And that's really what we try to focus on. The river as a resource, the communities that support it. But one of the great things about the Sojourn is the people that participate in it. And so we've just developed this really great sort of nice camaraderie. When you come on a Sojourn, some of the longtime Sojourners sort of will just bring you into the group and make you a part of the what they're doing and who they are. Every night we typically have try to have a campfire if the weather allows, and we've got 30 camp chairs that we just put around, and people just naturally start talking and connecting and making new friends and relationships. And that is really one of the wonderful things about the Sojourn, is the community that has sort of come up around this event that happens every year. We have music along the way. Of course, every year we have a T-shirt. This was a T-shirt from 2021. Participants get T-shirts, and we make a big deal out of that and celebrate sort of the event through our T-shirts. And as I said, we have music several nights, and it really is a wonderful event to get to meet new people. So one of the things I wanted to do was share a little bit about what the Sojourn looked like in 1999 or 2000 or 2001 versus what it looks like in 2023 and 2024. Of course, in those first days, that was mostly all canoes. There was no such thing as a kayak at this point on the river. Of course, they existed, but the primary mode of transportation on the river was canoes. And of course, now I think we still have a half dozen hardcore canoeists, but most people are in kayaks at this point. So it's much more colorful now, I would say, than what it was back then. But the gear has definitely changed over 25 years. You know, if you know the history of the Schuylkill River and the Schuylkill River Project, which Cherry has written the book on, the desilting basin project, you know, there were dozens of dams up and down the river. And the first year I did the Sojourn was in 2006, and I think we had to portage 9 dams that year. Since then, 3, maybe 4 dams have been removed on the river, so that was a very, very big change. On the left, you can see what was known as Yankee Dam, which is, I guess it's in like the Linfield, Limerick area. That dam is no longer there. Of course, there was the old Plymouth Dam, which was in Conshohocken, just north of Conshohocken region. That dam has been removed. And then the other one was the Felix Dam in the Reading area. That one was breached in Hurricane Agnes, is that right?
No, it was before that. It was Floyd.
Oh, Floyd breached it. But there was still remains there enough that we still had to portage that dam. So that was a really big change over the years, is seeing some of those dam removals take place. And not only the ease that it makes for sojourning, you don't have to get out and portage, but you know, just continuing to offer a free-flowing river for participants. And this is what the river looks like in Conshohocken, where Plymouth Dam used to be. So now we can just paddle right through there. So that's been a big change. People like to relax on a sojourn. It's a vacation. So oftentimes this is what the sojourn looked like over the years. You'd get out of your boat and have your lunch and find a nice spot to take a nap. That's what it looked like 25 years ago. And it still looks the same today. You can still find plenty of time to relax. And we like to provide downtime for people to, make new friendships. It is strenuous, paddling 15 miles a day. And so you want to make sure that people have enough opportunity to relax and recoup. In 2016, the Schuylkill River Greenways received an award from the American Society of Environmental History for the National Public Outreach Program, the best public outreach program in the country, which was really sort of overwhelming for us to receive, but we were pretty excited about that, just to sort of say that this program has really made a pretty big difference in the community and in the watershed. I'm not sure why my face looks sunburned, but it's an older photo. But that was really great. So we got to go and receive that award. Yeah, right, exactly. So, that's just to communicate that the Sojourn has had an impact on this region in a lot of different ways. And so, doing the undertaking that the Sojourn is every year for our organization and our partners, it's a lot. But what it has done over the course of a quarter century has been really, really impactful. So what I want to do now is, my co-presenter is Brian Swisher, and he you can just barely see him right here. That is the rapids at Kelly's Rapids, just north of Reading. That is on the Schuylkill itself. And so Brian is a longtime sojourner, and so we thought one of the things we would like to do is to bring him in, and he and I are I'm going to ask him some questions, and then he is going to give you information on his experience on the Sojourn. And then we'll get to hear from him a little bit on some of those things. So, Brian, why don't you come on up here, and I'm going to just ask questions, and you can answer to those folks. And so, how did you first learn of the Schuylkill River Sojourn, and what year did you first participate?
Well, the short answer is I started the same year as you did, 2006, and that was just coincidence, of course. But the way I found out about it was I kind of going to flash back a little bit, that I didn't even start kayaking until my kids were out of high school and into college, because I finally had some time to do something other than chase them around, coach them, you know, all that kind of stuff that you do when you're in that time frame. So I just started, was looking for sort of like lifetime kind of activities that I could do after having spent so much time at that frame of my life. And I started biking again, which is something I had been doing since a kid, but I decided to do more biking. And so I got involved in some long distance biking. In fact, I did a couple of solo bike rides, one from my home in Reading to Stone Harbor, New Jersey. And then I did another long distance, these are solo rides, from Pittsburgh to DC. And most of that was trail riding. So as I was doing a lot of that trail riding, I was getting involved in some, I also got involved in some Sojourn-like bike trips, or Rails to Trails Conservancy rides. And a lot of these rides and these trips were all along rivers. And I was thinking, well, this would be fun to actually be out on the river instead of just riding along the river sometimes. So I kind of got into, I rented a tube and then kayaks from a local outfitter that was set up near Monocacy, PA, which is near Douglasville, Pennsylvania, down along the Schuylkill. And I tried that out. I kind of liked it. And eventually I bought my own kayak, and I was clueless. I didn't know how to use it or do anything with it. And I was talking to some friends who knew about the Keystone Canoe Club, which was Reading-based also, and I got involved in that. They were in turmoil at the time, and things weren't weren't getting a lot of information or experiences from them. But then I'd also thought about this idea of these extended bike trips, and I was wondering if there was something like that for kayaking. And so I did find out that there was this thing called the Schuylkill River Sojourn, and a couple of friends of mine and I decided to try it out for 3 days in 2006, and then I have not missed a year since then. So,
what makes the Schuylkill River Sojourn unique among other paddling events?
Well, you covered a lot of the things. This is the way the Schuylkill works. You did a really good job of explaining them here. And I've done Susquehanna trips, North Branch, West Branch, Mid-Stem, those trips, Juliana, the Conemaugh, a whole bunch of different sojourns all around the Northeast. And since I did the Schuylkill, I liked it so much that I decided I wanted to try some of these other ones. And what makes the Schuylkill unique is pretty much everything you showed here, and that's not wasn't necessarily the case for all these other sojourns. There's a consistency of the organization, even before you, and as continuing with you and the others in your group. That core people who organize it. That you mentioned the guides. The Quants really set the bar with the way they handled the river work, and gave a lot of instilled confidence, taught people, guided people through the right way to go through some of the trickier situations and so forth. And that consistency is something that you just don't find in some of these other events. And some would have good guides because it was sometimes the same ones. Others would not have the good organization, or the organization would change the next year. And so those kind of consistency issues were one of the things that I think make the Sojourn unique from the structural standpoint. But the one thing that I always like to tell people about when I'm talking about the Schuylkill Sojourn is that you see an entire river in a week. Where you go into the Susquehanna, it takes you a week just to get from one type of river to the next. Tim talked about a 25-foot wide river starting in Schuylkill Haven. You wind up going through, the Schuylkill Gap into Port Clinton. You go down through the Berks County farmland. You go down through several urban areas, all the way down into Philadelphia, where that's an entirely different scene. So you get to see all those different personalities. Like every day, there's kind of a different feel to the Schuylkill, and I think that's one of the things that I've always liked so much about it, and that's kind of what I like to tell people about when I'm talking about the uniqueness of the Schuylkill Sojourn.
What have you noticed that's changed in the 17 or 18 years that you've done the Schuylkill Sojourn?
You mentioned the dams. I didn't even know about the first one you mentioned, so that must have been taken out before my time. But there was the one at near Linfield, or Trinley Park. Some of those dams were actually very hazardous, so we obviously would portage around them, but it made even some of those portages really interesting. We had to do like one particular spot, we had to just throw the boats over the dam and then collect them at the bottom. But we made up with like a cowboy roundup of rounding up all the boats and moving off the shore. But that sort of thing was one of the major changes in the river itself. The river has changed. I don't know if it's because of climate change or just circumstances, but there have been some situations like Kelly's, where you see me there. That doesn't seem to be nearly as wild as it had been in previous years, many previous years. But that could be just when we go and that sort of thing. But there's some things that are sort of a little more mellow, but there's also some situations in the river now where we have a lot more wood in the water, a lot more trees have come down, and I don't know exactly the reasons for that, but the upper section up in the Schuylkill Haven area, there's a lot of trees that have to be continually removed, and Taken Outdoors has done a lot of that removal, and other people in the past. But those are the things about the river that have changed the most. But there's also been more infrastructure included, which is new landings. The greenways and fish and boat have added, improved some of these landings. So basically the river itself, the infrastructure of the river has been improving in those time.
What makes the Schuylkill Sojourn so approachable for a beginner?
We go back to the guides, the river guides. The quants sort of set the standard of being very welcoming, very instructive, very competent. You knew that if you got in trouble, you'd get out of that situation. And that's been carried on with Bad Adventures, and now with Take It Outdoors. Take It Outdoors just had their first chance to do this past year, and they were outstanding as well. So that kind of comfort zone that the river guides provide, I think, has been one of the keys to that.
Yeah, well, to add on to that.
And solid organization too. I'm not just saying because Tim's here, but having sort of that consistency of organization, from year to year to year, you know what's going to happen. You don't have surprises. You know you're always going to have lunch. You're always going to have this. You're going to have that, and all that doesn't always happen on some of the other trips I've done.
Do you have a favorite memory?
I have too many. I have a lot of favorites. I mean, I think about, not all the time, but I think about all the 18 years of that. There's little memories that pop up all the time. One of my favorite memories that kind of goes back to the earliest days was the first time that I rounded the bend, the very last day, rounding the bend at the Boathouse Road. There's a lighthouse, but it's called the lighthouse. It's not really, it's one of the boathouses, or it's a clubhouse. You round the bend and you see the entire Schuylkill, this entire Philadelphia skyline open up to you. And you see Boathouse Row on your right, and your left you see now the Sierra Center and Schuylkill Expressway. And you're sitting down here in this kind of like, almost like the bowl, and you see all this surrounding with all the skyline, the skyscrapers. It's a beautiful view of the skyline. And you add that to the fact that you've just paddled all the way from Schuylkill Haven to get there. It's a really kind of an emotional moment. And what made that even more emotional for me was a few years later, one of the guys who was brand new to the Sojourn had a rough week. He swam in almost every rapid, every big rapid he was swimming. So he had a rough week, but he was enjoying himself. He was plugging along. And I paddled with him down that last stretch around the lighthouse, and you should have seen the feeling of satisfaction and pride when he saw that skyline. And his wife was on the dock waving for him, and it was just a really great moment. So those are two favorite moments. But then, the first time that I made it through, like I said, I wasn't very experienced when I first did this sojourn, but going through Kelly's the first time successfully was fun. Going through Lock 60, which is just not a challenging thing, but being locked through on the lock at the Lock 60 area was a real fun experience. Those kind of first time things were really do stick with me.
Any characters that maybe stick out to you from that you've met over the years?
Well, there was one guy who was he was a really nice guy. He was very helpful and all that, very enthusiastic, almost enthusiastic to the point of being like crazy. So we called him, well, we didn't, or I didn't, but people called him Mike the Crazy Russian. He spoke with some sort of a, Eastern European accent, and maybe he was Russian, we don't know. But he was a really good guy, but he had so much energy, and the Sojourn moves at a sort of a controlled pace. It's not the fastest person just goes as fast as they can go. So the whole Sojourn kind of tries to move together as much as they can. It strings out, but you get a certain amount of spacing in there if you don't keep the group controlled to a certain extent. So the lead boat's job is to do that. And Mike had so much energy, he just could not stay behind the lead boat, although he wanted to because he was trying to play by the rules. So what he would do is he'd paddle from the back, and he'd wind up at the front. I mean, this is like half an hour's worth of paddling to get from the front to the back of the pack. And then as soon as he got to the front, he would paddle upstream as much as he could. And he could do that 2 or 3 or 4 times in a segment. And so that was just one of the guys that just sticks in my mind.
All right, great. Last question. How has your role in the event changed over the years?
Well, the first year, in 2006, when I did 3 days, did it to just see what it was like, see if I liked it. And actually, I had a stress fracture on my one foot at the same time, so I was wearing a walking boot, but I couldn't have that in my kayak, so I had to come up with some plan to have like a mini boot that was kind of holding me in place but would still fit in the kayak. So I was clueless, totally clueless. I didn't even do Kelly's that year because I spoke to Alan, and Alan said I probably shouldn't, Alan Kwan, that I probably shouldn't do that in there if I couldn't get in and out of the boat well. So I was like a minnow in that situation. I was totally clueless. But over the years, as I've been doing this year after year after year, I was sort of and eventually asked to be one of the volunteer safety people because I learned from them and I tried to do things the way they did things. And so I was one of the safety volunteer boats on the river. And then eventually I got to the point where I was getting pretty knowledgeable about the river. And I was asked when, and I also was involved with Keystone Canoe Club work. So I was leading trips doing our club trips. I got getting more experienced. And then at the time when the Greenways were trying to update their paddlers information, they asked me and a few of other Keystone Canoe Club people who were fairly experienced to be on a committee and kind of figure out how this was going to happen. And so I got involved in that, and eventually I became the lead person in designing and writing that guide. And then to the point where I got onto the organizing committee, and I've been doing all the graphic design for them. And eventually they've asked me to be the lead boat through this for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, lead boat on the Sojourn. So that I'm kind of like the poster child for the theme, for the goal of this whole exercise is get somebody out in the water, they take ownership of it, and hopefully they become stewards of the river. And I'm definitely a strong advocate and proponent of this river.
Yeah, great. Very well said, Brian. Thank you. So we're going to bring Brian back up in a couple minutes. But he raises a really great point. That is our mission is to connect people to the Schuylkill River and to champion the Schuylkill River. And we're very firm believers that if you create personal touch points for people, that they will take ownership of it, they'll see the value in it, and then they will become stewards of it themselves. And so here you have somebody who started as a biker, turned into a kayaker, now is a volunteer in our organization. So over the course of time has really become to say, hey, I believe in this and what you're doing and find value in this. So, and he also touched on one other thing. How do you keep 125 people in kayaks all in one group and without getting them lost? We have what's called a lead boat and a sweep boat. You're not allowed to go in front of the lead boat, and you're not allowed to drop behind the sweep boat. So everybody's got to stay in front. So they both come with interesting roles. You need certain personalities. Brian as the lead boat, he's got to sort of figure out, okay, what's the paddling skill this year? Like, can I pick it up a little bit? Or are we starting to get too spread out? Maybe I have to slow down and bring the pack together. The real tough one is the sweep boat, because you're dealing with people mostly who may be struggling that day, or maybe they had a shoulder injury that came up the day before. Maybe they're a very first-time kayaker and the boat's going in circles. And so it really takes a really unique person, very patient person, to be that sweep boat. You also have to look for kayaks that have pulled off to the side to go into the woods to take care of things that you don't want to leave behind you. So that's how we keep track of 120 people on the river every single day. So, Fred, what time do we go to? 12:45?
No, 12:30.
Oh boy, I better hurry. So the impact. What impact has the Schuylkill River Sojourn had? One of the big things that we do as an organization is we care about public access to the river. That is what a public access looked like in East Falls not too long ago. That is the new East Falls public access that East Falls Development Corporation built for residents of Philadelphia and anybody else looking to get into the river. So that's a really big thing that we do. This is two new ramps access points that we've built in Port Clinton and Bridgeport. It's a really big deal, trying to make public access points for all communities up and down the river. It brings attention to the river, which of course is one of the big things of the Sojourn. Communities, we try to play a role in the community. So every single time we have food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we involve a community partner. This happens to be a picture of the Kumru Lions Club. They provide a dinner and a breakfast the next morning. It is a fundraiser for that group. We work with Lions Clubs, with Rotaries, with Hamburg High School Outdoors Club. They provide the meal, and then we obviously pay them for it, and they make money on that. So that it goes back into their budget for the year. Port Clinton Firehouse. It's one of the best dinners of the year of the week. It's right in Port Clinton. It's a very popular spot for thru hikers on the Appalachian Trail. Every single year of the Sojourn, there will be a thru hiker that comes through, and they'll stumble upon oh my gosh, look at this, and they come in and they jump in with our group to have dinner that evening. So Brian, as we mentioned, Brian created this paddler's guide along with some folks on our staff and other community members. This has won 3 awards, including the British Cartography Award, which Brian went all the way to England to accept the honor of that. But this is a fantastic guide. It's a wildlife guide. It's a historic guide. But really in here are maps all the way down the river for paddlers or boaters or birders to use. This is on waterproof paper for people to use. And there's all these sections in here. You're welcome to come look at it. This has just been an unbelievable resource for people all up and down the river. This is our second version of that. If you want to look at it afterwards, please help yourself. It is for sale, yes. You can get it through our office on our website. I was hoping to spend a little more time on that, but I'm going to keep moving here with only about...
I think Fred's wrong, just to tell Fred that...
I do have more time?
Yes, you do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think Cherry shifted everything 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, great. So, yeah, Brian, I don't know if you can do a 1-minute thing on the paddling guide. There is not another paddling guide in the country that is like that. And I'm not saying that to brag about what we've done. I'm saying that about Brian and his skills and the people that worked with Brian to produce this. It is a fantastic resource. What's that?
What does it cost?
$45, I think, is what it costs. And it covers every square inch of the river. If you're going to get in the river, And you need to know where the safety hazards are, where the dams are, it covers all that, where access points are, how many miles it is to the next access point. It also has historic sites and cultural sites along the way, so if you're paddling and you pass sort of an interesting artifact, you can sort of figure out what it is. It is an amazing resource. So, Brian, do you want to add anything to that?
It was a very comprehensive. It was meant to be a paddler's guide, not just a map of the river. It's a relatively large scale, so every hazardous area is pointed out, and there's written descriptions of how to either avoid or run that particular hazard. There are enlarged diagram type maps on those same hazards to show you visually how to get through some of the rapids and so forth. So some of those things were not just something to do. It was to make it easy for someone, not easy, but easier for people to pretty much navigate the entire river from top to bottom safely and enjoyably. It was to get people out on the river, to be comfortable, because even coming through the sort of the Sojourn farm system, there was so much you had to learn. I mean, Tim had said that the river isn't real hard, and it isn't, but there's enough trickiness about this river. It's not just all flat water. There's sections, especially through Reading, that have a lot of class 1 rapids that can be maybe not life and death, but they create a lot of problems. So there's things that you need to know to run this river comfortably and successfully. So some of that was built into this. A lot of that was built in. So this was meant to be something that people would actually use. And that's why the whole thing is waterproof, so you can have it in your boat, and you can have it right at hand as you're doing something in preparation for those things. This is not just like an encyclopedia. This is meant to be used. And the best compliments I get about this are that people are using it, because that's really what it was meant to be for.
Yep.
And there's a lot, and as Tim pointed out, that you opened up one of the maps, and not only is the river detailed, but on each one of these spreads, this shows a lot of the historical points along the way, as he pointed out, and this shows basically a turn-by-turn kind of description of what the map is. These are all the waypoints to find, and when there's a hazardous situation, it's shown with this illustration and a description of it. So every one of the sections, which are basically day trips, each one of these sections was created as a day trip. So you should be able to complete each one of these maps in one day's time. So that makes, again, easier if you just were going to do that section. This is all you would need to take along.
Is that paper or plastic?
It's plastic, and it's waterproof. It's called UPO material. It's a laminate that has plastic on the inside. It's almost like a tie band, and it's almost impossible to tear. The guy who we did this for, Bob Falwell, who was the Trails Project coordinator, he bit through it to try to prove that it could be destroyed.
Well, great. Yeah, come up and take a
questions at the end.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to get there as quickly as I can.
No.
Yeah, that's.
No. I didn't mean it that way. I just had one. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So one of the other things, impact that the Sojourn has had, we're really proud of this program. It started about 5 years ago. It was an idea of a couple of the Sojourners sitting around the campfire that I said happens every night. There's no doubt when you attend a Sojourn that the population is starting to, get a little older. So how can we introduce the Sojourn and get younger people onto the river? And so we came up with this idea of a mentee program. And there's 2, sometimes 3 days during the Sojourn that we work with a local youth group. It can be, we've worked with Upward Bound, we've worked with like YWCA. This past year we brought in a group from Star City Boxing, which is a group in Reading. Kids who have never ever been in a kayak before, maybe never ever been near the Schuylkill River. And so they show up with kids, maybe 6 or 8 or 10 kids, and we match them up with a longtime sojourner. And so that longtime sojourner sort of takes them under their wing for the whole day, teaches them about kayaking, paddling, how to get down the river, all those sorts of things. And it has just been a fantastic program for us. And this will be, I think, the 6th year that we've done it. Getting young people on the water and experiencing it and helping them learn about the significance that the river plays, even in their own communities. So it is always some of the funnest days of the year of the week. We play Capture the Flag every year. We have a big pirate flag, and it stays on the front of a boat, and you can paddle up and steal it. And there's just a week-long game of Capture the Flag, and the kids really love doing that. Another big thing with the Sojourn is it's an entire 7 days where we really promote and we try to get media to come out to the event or to cover it. And it's a great awareness and attention thing for the river. It's a drinking water source for almost 2 million people in the watershed. And so continuing to try to get that message out there. We've had coverage from all the big papers and bloggers, and of course the big news stations we have had come out at different points throughout the 25 years and cover the Sojourn, which we think is really great for people to learn about. And the perception, we're constantly trying to work on changing the perception that people have of the Schuylkill River. You're here at the Watershed Congress. I don't need to tell everybody here what the perception has been and maybe sort of is. But we do continue to try to promote the benefits of the Schuylkill and how it has changed, and that we still have a lot of work still to do. But so many partners working up and down the river have made significant change in the river, and you could probably even see that in the 25 years that the Sojourn has been around. And I would just promote one more time, Take It Outdoors. They're sort of our lead guide. They do a fantastic job. They have events all through the year. You can hop on their website and see some of the stuff that they do. So really quickly before we go to questions, our Sojourn this year will be June 15th to 21st. Our theme this year is Our Living River. We're going to focus on things like flora and fauna and critters and creatures and all those kinds of fun things. I think we've got some programming from Eric, who's going to tell us about the eels. And we're going to look at things like mushrooms and butterflies and macros and stormwater stuff and all kinds of different things that are impacting the ecology and biology of the river. And we've adopted I can't remember, I always get, is it the red-spotted newt? Is that correct? Or the eastern red-spotted newt? That's him for this year, him or her, and that's going to be our mascot for this coming year's Sojourn. So check it out, come join us, paddle the river. It'll be a really fun time. So happy to answer any questions that you might have in the last 5 or 8 minutes or so.
Yeah. When did the tickets go on sale?
So registration, if you're going to do the full trip, we open the registration up for full trippers April 1st. So the very first week in April is just for full trippers, and then the following week it opens up to anybody looking to do just a couple days. It's around $100, $110 for 1 day. That gets you, a fully guided trip. It gets you the 3 meals, all the food and drink and everything that you need. You can bring your own kayaking gear. You can rent from our outfitter, whatever you need. So, yes, good question. We will be opening registration pretty shortly here. Yeah. Yes.
Are there transportation opportunities?
Yep. Yep. So we have a shuttle, multiple shuttle options. One is you're going to do the whole week. You can leave your car in Schuylkill Haven. You can do the whole week, and then there's a shuttle at the very end that takes everybody all the way back to Schuylkill Haven. That's one option. The other option is we have a shuttle every single day. So if you're just doing 1 day, as soon as we get off the water, people get on the shuttle, you take it back and pick up your car, and then you drive back to where we take out. You can have dinner, you pack up your gear, and you can leave. If you're going to do multiple days, the recommendation is you're going to take the shuttle every single day and just sort of bring your car downriver with you each night if you're going to do 3 days or something like that. Yeah.
It's only a school bus, but it really works well.
Yeah, so there's options for that. Yeah. And there are some people that don't like to camp, and so what do? They drive 20 minutes or 5 minutes depending on what community we're near. They grab a hotel or a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb. All kinds of options now. Instead of choosing to camp out, you can do that as well.
Yeah, so full disclosure, I'm with Power, so so one of the supporters.
So I guess I just have a few more questions about sort of like, and maybe this is too technical and we'll sit together at lunch or something, but I'm really curious, we're really curious in terms of like a lot of what you're saying about your mentee program was really great. I think that's cool. And my question there was, do you know if any of those kids that were mentored one year come back on their own or bring their family, or what's your metric for why you see that as successful?
Yeah, so let's see. I can go back to this. Am I the right one, wrong one?
I mean, I get it, they have a great time on the
Yeah.
water. That's its total metric. Yes, we love it.
So this
Like,
family
it's
here,
longer
this is Andre, and he applied. He wanted to come and learn how to kayak. So he applied to 1 year. There's a diversity scholarship with the Schuylkill Action Network that funded that. Convinced his parents, drugged them along, and the first year I think they just paddled 2 days and just camped out one night. And he was the most precocious, like 11-year-old you can imagine. He had an absolute ball, and they have come back the subsequent 2 years for multiple nights to continue to be a part of the Sojourn. So, I mean, that's just one example. The group from Star City Boxing that we had last year, they've just said we're going to continue to participate. This is just a fantastic event. The one kid this kid is like the number 7 boxer in the country for his weight class, and he is now graduated from school, and he has now taken on a leadership role with Star City, so he is now recruiting kids on his own to try to come out and do this, and we've done some other programming with them aside from it. The group on the bottom is Discovery Pathways in Philadelphia. Other than some anecdotal stories like that, I don't know that we have a lot of data to support that, but we do have some stories that we can share, yeah.
And you did mention a diversity scholarship. So as well planned as this is and as easy as you make it, there's got to be, there's probably still barriers for some people to not be able to make it out there. And whether it's, they don't know, they can't get a whole week off, maybe they don't even know. I mean, there's people whose jobs require that, they can't.
Absolutely.
They might only know 3 days before that they have the day off. So, and cost, of course, is always like a pretty assumed barrier. So how are some of those overcome?
So, some of those things are overcome by having different programming. Programming that's a little bit, maybe slightly, like I mentioned this morning, the pedal and paddles that we have, our organization has throughout the year. They're a little bit more easier on weekends and Saturdays, and it's only like a 3 or 4 hour event. So those kinds of things we do. We have the scholarships. We have several different scholarship options that we give. The diversity scholarship. We have several paddlers who are longtime sojourners who passed away, and their family have given donations to our organization to try to have first timers, and people do that. By only, there is transportation issues, people coming from long distances. Fear of getting on the river is a big one, and so that's part of what we did with the mentee program. And we have tandem kayaks, we have canoes that we can take people in if they're fearful of getting in a kayak by themselves. But we're certainly open to looking and continuing to sort of try to figure out new ways. Yes?
What effect does the weather have on your schedules?
Good question. This was my 17th, this past year was the 17th Sojourn that I was a part of. And I think only one day in all 17, I'm gonna need some wood to knock on. One day in all of those 17 years we had to cancel because of too high water, where it was unsafe. We will paddle every day. If it's cold and raining, we're gonna paddle. If there are thunderstorms or like that kind of extreme weather, the guides on the water, they make the decision whether we're gonna wait and not go back on after lunch, or we're gonna wait until it passes. On occasion, there have been storms when the group has been paddling and they pull off to the side of the river and they take the steps to try to be safe. Last year we almost couldn't paddle the very first day because of no water. It had been so dry. If you remember the first part of spring, like this time of year, like March and April were very, very wet last year. And then all of a sudden, May and June, it was very, very dry. And the very first day on the river up in the Schuylkill County, it's very, very shallow and very rocky. And we were not going to be able to paddle that day we got 2.5 inches of rain the Thursday night before the Sojourn started, and it made it possible to paddle. So the weather, it hasn't had as much of an impact as you would imagine, I guess would be the
But
answer.
on days where you have to cancel, are they made up or is just one of the?
Yeah, no, so what we'll do, that like the day back in 2006 or something, or 7, it happened to be one of the first days the river was just too dangerous to paddle on. So what we did is we rented buses, and we took people, we tried to make alternate plans. So we partnered with Hawk Mountain and said, can we bring a busload of people to Hawk Mountain and have them go for a hike? Some people did that. Other people just chose, I'm just going to go to the next campsite and I'm going to hang out or go out to eat or something like that. But yeah, sadly, it's sort of a lost day. Yeah. And most people recognize I'm making a donation to an organization that's going to use these funds to, better the river, make better public access, and they're fine with that.